Hi guys, so this is inputting values into functions. So we've got two examples of functions here. We've got two different functions in this first example. So the first one is f of x equals x plus 5, and the second one is g of x equals x squared minus 1. So uh, these notations here, this f colon x and an arrow, that's the same thing as f of x and bracket x. So that's the same thing as f of x like that equals x plus 5. There's no difference at all, it's just different notation. And this here, that's the same thing as g of x equals x squared minus 1. So what we've got here, we have to input these values into the two functions. So we're dealing with two functions here. The very first one anyway, f of 3. So it says f of 3, therefore all we're going to do is we're going to put in a 3 in instead of the x in the f of x function. So if f of x equals x plus 5, well then f of 3, so I'm just putting a 3 in instead, would be 3 plus 5, and 3 plus 5 is 8. So that'll be the answer to that one. That one's nice and simple. So they'll get a little bit trickier. The second one then, g of minus 3. Well, I know that g of x equals x squared minus 1. Therefore, g of 3 will be, it's minus 3. That will be minus 3 squared minus 1. So minus 3 squared, minus multiplied by minus is positive. So that minus 3 squared will be 9. Double check on the calculator if you want. 9 minus 1 is 8. So that will be 8 as well, actually. Right, this is where it gets tricky then. And this is where kind of rules of algebra come into it and that. So now we have to put in things with k's in them in this one. So you're going to do it pretty much the same way. It's just obviously now you'll be putting 2k in. So you'll be putting in a variable, a letter, alongside the number itself. So we know that f of x equals, so this is the third one now, I'm kind of running out of space here a little bit. F of x equals x plus 5. Therefore, f of 2k. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a 2k, I'm going to put 2k in instead of x. So you're basically subbing in 2k this time. So if I put a 2k in instead of my x in this, I'm just going to get 2k plus 5. And that's my answer then. I can't go any further really, because you don't know what k is. K could be anything. So your answer then is just 2k plus 5. So f of 2k is 2k plus 5. If f of x is x plus 5, then f of 2k is 2k plus 5. You're just putting it in instead. The next one, they're asking for f of k plus 1. So again, I know that f of x is x plus 5. So now I'm putting in k plus 1. So f of k plus 1 will be, so this is where I'm going to put a k plus 1 in instead of the x. So if I put in k plus 1 instead of x there, it'll be k plus 1 plus 5. So I've replaced that x with k plus 1. And then you can tidy it up then a little bit, because all you've got here then is k plus 1 plus 5. So k plus 1 plus 5, I can add the 1 and the 5 together. So that's k plus 6. So that's the answer then. And you can't go any further again because you don't know what k is. Next one is g of 3k. So because it's g this time, we're looking at the g function. So the g of x equals x squared plus 1. I can write that out first. Minus 1, x squared minus 1. So they're asking us for g of 3k. So again, I'm going to put a 3k in instead of the x here. Now, this is where rules of algebra kind of come in then, so you have to be really careful here then. It's x squared, so you're putting a 3k in instead of the x. In this one, all of the x is being squared. Therefore, if I'm putting a 3k instead of that x, all of the 3k has to be squared. So I'm going to put in 3k with brackets around it like that, and to be squared, and then minus 1. So there's actually two things being squared here. There's 3 is being squared and k is being squared. So if I was to square 3, that would be 9, because 3 squared is 9. And then if I'm to square the k, it would be k squared. So it'd be 9k squared minus 1. So that's actually going to be the answer there, 9k squared minus 1. The last one here then, I'm putting in k plus 1 instead. So I'm using g again. It's g of k plus 1. So g of x equals x squared minus 1. So now I'm putting in a k plus 1 instead of the x. So g of k plus 1 would equal, it'll be all of the k plus 1 has to be squared in, because x squared, so if I'm putting in a k plus 1 instead of the x, I have to square all of k plus 1. So k plus 1 squared, take away 1, and then you can actually go ahead and kind of expand out the brackets then. So k plus 1 squared is the same thing as k plus 1 multiplied by k plus 1. That's just what squaring means. If you're to expand it, this is expanding out double brackets then. So I've got two brackets beside each other, so you need to multiply everything in them. So look back at expanding double brackets if you're not sure what I'm doing here. So k multiplied by k is k squared, k multiplied by 1 is k, 1 multiplied by k is k, and 1 multiplied by 1 is 1. And I still have that minus 1 at the end, so I'm just bringing that down onto the next line. And that would be, so it'd be k squared plus 2k, because k plus k is 2k. And then plus 1 minus 1 is just 0, so plus 0. So the final answer to that one then would be k squared plus 2k. So g of k plus 1 would be k squared plus 2k. So gets tricky when you have to put in variables and things into it, but just try and, the starting point is to just try and put in exactly what it is instead of the x, or instead of whatever you're putting in. So you're substituting it in directly, and then if you make mistakes from there, then it's not the end of the world. You can look at the answers and correct them, but try and get the general idea of putting something in instead of something else. So that's what we do with functions. So here's another one you can just try yourself. So if you want to pause the video there and attempt it, so you've only got one function you're dealing with here. So f of x equals 5x plus 1, so you're putting a minus 3 in instead of the x first, and then you're putting a fifth in, actually a fraction, and then you're going to put in a k for the next one, and you're going to put in 2k and put in 2k minus 1. So try it and then play on the video and I'll go through the answers. So the first one here, f of x equals 5x minus 1. So f of minus 3 they're asking us for would be 5 multiplied by minus 3 minus 1. So 5 multiplied by minus 3 is minus 15, and then I have to take away 1. So minus 15 take away 1 is minus 16. The second one here, f of x again equals 5x minus 1. So I have to do f of a fifth, so f of 1 over 5. That would equal 5 multiplied by 1 over 5, take away 1. And 5 multiplied by 1 over 5 is just going to be 1. So 5 multiplied by a fifth is actually just 1. So we get 1 take away 1, which is 0 for that one. Next one, f of x equals 5x minus 1, and they want us to find f of k. So f of k would just be 5k minus 1. So you're just putting an k in instead of the x, and then you can't go any further than that. Then it's just going to be 5k minus 1 for that one. Next one, f of x equals 5x minus 1, and they want us to do f of 2k this time. So f of 2k equals, so think about what you're doing then. You're putting this 2k in instead of this x. So you're going to get 5 multiplied by 2k minus 1. And then you can multiply out from there. So 5 multiplied by 2k would be 10k. And then you still have that minus 1 there. So it'll just be 10k minus 1. The last one then, f of x again is 5x minus 1. So this time you're putting in 2k minus 1 instead. So it's f of 2k minus 1. So that's going to be 5 multiplied by 2k minus 1. Minus 1. So I'm just putting that, all of that 2k minus 1 in instead of the x. So that's going to be, if I can multiply out the brackets, then I can multiply the 5 into this. So 5 multiplied by 2k is 10k. And 5 multiplied by minus 1 is minus 5. And then I still have that minus 1, so I'm just going to bring it down. So I get 10k minus 5 minus 1 will be minus 6. So 10k minus 6.